Welcome, welcome, welcome. Welcome to our spiritual morning. Let's just close our eyes, align with our breath, check our postures, and feel so grateful for the breath that we're inhaling and exhaling. Life given to us so easily to be able to breathe in and breathe out. Yes, the unfolding of life may be a bit tough, but the very essence of life is so easy. Without effort, we live because the breathing is happening automatically. And this breathing, which is the oxygen generator, is helping our body work efficiently. The digestive system, the endocrine system, the nervous system, everything is going on so well because it is being replenished with oxygen. And of course, we as humans hydrate our body as well from time to time, nourish our body with food as well, and harmonize our body with meditation. In today's meditation, let's go deep within to understand the hidden depths of our being. Who am I? Who am I? I am the spirit, the soul, born with eternal love and light. And I have chosen a path to be traversing on. Now, whatever excites the human heart, and deep inside you feel that this is my feeling, I need to go in this direction. When you do that with love, with genuineness, with purity, with light, you're bound to be successful. Now, what about who am I? I here is a soul, we've discussed, but I here occupies a human body. Now, let's understand with this human body comes in the heart. So, how does your heart feel? What do you do for your self love? Very imperative. The first step is for doing than others, doing it for yourself. Compliment yourself. Admire something about yourself. Characteristics of yours. Maybe something that physically looks like. But let's understand the more love, compassion, kindness, empathy we have to share, the more we will be shared with. And then we will never have the earthful of people loving us. To nurture and nourish ourselves is of paramount importance. We are made up of trillions of cells, each cell talking the language of love and light. And yet, so oftentimes, we don't like some things in our life and we voice it out. But today onwards, can we start not voicing it out and accepting it for who it is and being grateful for what it is, because gratitude is the biggest multiplier. Gratitude has the power to alter the DNA of anything. So today, for example, I've received something which I don't really like. Yet there's no harm in me expressing my gratitude rather than saying, hey, I don't like it much. Can you take it back and give it to somebody worthy? Which means you're not worthy enough. Or you're worth so much more. The false ego comes in the place and starts dictating. Remember, anything inferior or superior in thoughts comes in from ego. When we are coming towards spiritual beings, we'll be talking the language equanimity. Life has been full of magics. Light is what we all get to see. There is a hidden light inside us. Have we opened that light, given access to it? Or does it shine through all our virtues and our gifts that we've been brought to Mother Earth on with? We are here to tune inwards. These moments of silence are so important to reflect on who we were, who we are, and what are we becoming, because the power is in the now. And the air is potent with full moon vibrations. It's a perfect time to manifest and to surrender and to trust the process. It's very important to tap into our own energy, our own sound width. What are we listening? What thoughts are percolating inside us? What company do we keep? Where are we spending our valuable time with and who? It's very important to reflect, reflect, and reflect. Today's morning will be all about reflection so that you can think of dream journaling later. And today's extra step will be in the reflections book if you have the journals, or others if you made on your own. Based on your dreams, write the to-do steps with a timeline and keep reminding yourself whether you want to put mobile timers or any other way or have an accountability partner. Keep checking on your progress. Even here, every morning, we meditate, we read, and then we check our progress, don't we? That is of paramount importance. What is happening with you? Are you doing everything mechanically because you have to? Tune into yourself. Check your manifestation status and know that whatever is not done, the seeds have been sown. If you want to expedite that, then you sow the seeds again today. If required, divide your list into 6 different parts: health, financial and business and work, family, my time, spirituality. travel. Now, this could be in whichever order you want, or you can pick up two, three out of this and leave the others. Doesn't matter. Whatever your heart guides you to. Heart always speaks the truth. Important to peep into ourselves. Even if you feel you're done, continue it. The deeper you go, the more pearls you'll find, pearls of wisdom within yourself, because your higher self is guiding you. Your masters, angel guardians, teachers, loved ones are guiding you. We've all been blessed with so much, and we all have the potential in us to have so much more. Now, how much so much is required is a question I ask myself and write in my journal. Be aware of your breath and the beautiful thoughts that are coming in. So beautiful, so magical. You can probably see your future if you wish to see, if you're a good visualizer. And feel that you're feeling that feeling now of having living that dream, not in the future, but in the present. And you may continue this entire feeling of tuning inwards, writing your gratitude, or simply being in tune with what you wish to manifest, what you wish to surrender, with the moon's energy being bright and beautiful. Mother Moon is known with emotions. She's always bringing to all of us so much more. Maybe tune into energy, maybe make our dreams come true. because everyone deserves to make their dreams come true. This moon, especially, is so much about growing, so much about realizing how powerful we are, so much about knowing, so much about growing. It's October full moon has a lunar eclipse also. Today, many people call it the hunter's moon because it's time for each of us to go hunting in preparation for the cold winter ahead. It's an extraterrestrial event that's happening with super energy, which is significant. Today, it's 3 times more powerful and emotional. Today marks the culminations, the breakthroughs, the breakdowns, the triggering of maybe a crisis event, which will help us to assess our internal fears, feelings, and actions. So let's make the most of it. And now, you can rub your hands together, bless the world with health, wealth, healing, and sealing the deal for more abundance, for more glory, for more internal assessment, for more internal growth, for being more spiritual, for helping each soul's ascension, ultimately leading to Mother Earth's ascension. Be blessed. And now you can bless your body with any extra energy that may have been left. And gently open your eyes as we resume reading of a wonderful book. Miracles Happen, and which again, it's all about life experiences of people that will kind of tell us what we are meant to learn. Today's story is called Finding Hope. Hope. If there is one predominant outcome of your trainings and experiences, it is that one is left with the hope that may not have existed before. For whatever reason, belief systems tend to be subjective and may be shaken by global or personal events. Yet your trainings offer a distinct opportunity to add actual experience to faith or belief, yielding an outcome that may be rationalized but not denied. For me, that resulting and abiding outcome equals hope. First, a little background. I'm a licensed professional therapist in the state of Oklahoma. I've spent 27 years working with chronic schizophrenia patients in an inpatient setting. I designed the behavioral system and had oversight of the program. Thus, as a behaviorist and therapist, you might say that structure was my guiding principle. What follows below is the universe's non too subtle method of saying, Mr. Wilson, your structure is microscopically small, and the comfort and security that you have experienced within that structure is not where it begins or ends. Approximately 5 years ago, I found myself in desperate need of quite a few continuing education hours to renew my license as a professional therapist. Like many others, I typically wait until the last minute and begin seeking them in a panic. I do not recall how I found out about the seminar, However, I saw it as an opportunity to get the hours that I needed and didn't think much about the content. My wife and I arrived at the crossings in Austin, and the next morning I joined many others in the first session. I was, needless to say, quickly convinced that I was in the room with a bunch of nuts when people began to identify themselves as angel therapists, Reiki masters, and so forth, terms of which I had never heard. I had the distinct feeling that I was in the wrong place, raised in a quiet, strict, conservative Southern Baptist environment, and subsequently, having strayed from organized religion, I had not filled that slot with anything else. The result of this religion void was that I considered myself moral, black and white, and strongly attached to God on a personal rather than organizational level. In other words, I had God well defined and in a box that I created for Him, and I was happy as long as He stayed within my parameters. The first hour of the seminar had me ready to run out of the door and not look back. However, at the break, I told my wife of my misgivings, and she said, "Look, you need the hours, you're already here. You have paid for the week, and you might as well stick it out." Reluctantly, I agreed. Shortly thereafter, Dr. Wise did a group progression. I can't emphasize enough that I closed my eyes with trepidation and extreme disbelief and caution. I would have bet the farm that my resistance would have prevented any hypnotic state. If I were ever in the wrong, if I were ever wrong in my place about anything, this was a hands down winner of that category. I immediately found myself in a seashore village as a 10-year-old boy, the homes and thatched roofs with the dirt and rock path winding between them. There were geese and dogs here, and they're running loose. The grass was green as green can be, and I was running and playing along the path. There were others in the village. I knew them, but paid no mind. I rounded the corner of the houses, and from up the hill behind me, I heard a strong male voice that I knew to be my name, Johar or Johar. I stopped, he called again, and I went running to what I knew was my father. He was at a home near the top of the path, working on the large grinding stone that appeared to be a wheel. He was sharpening axes and swords, and I knew this was his job. It was clear that this was a Norse village. In the next scene, I was 18 years old, and my father and I, along with many other Norsemen, were in a ship sailing to a foreign shore for the purpose of attack and plunder. I stood in front of my father and said, without looking back at him, "I don't know what to do." He responded, "You will know when you get there. In my present life, I had seen pictures before of Norsemen and what they wore. However, it was while on this ship that I had the realization of what each piece of clothing was for. For the first time, I recognized that the arm bracelet was actually for defense against weaponry. Then we were back in our own village, and my father was lying on a stiff looking bed. He was dying from a wound that he had received while we were in a battle, as I kneeled by his side. Later, I returned from another battle and I lay dying just as my father had. My own young son was kneeling by my bedside, just as I had knelt by my father. There, in response to, "What have you learned?" I remember thinking, "We have not learned anything. Here we are, generation after generation, still fighting and dying, and my son will do the same." At this point, we were brought out of the hypnotic state. I was, for the lack of a better phrase, freaked out. In the course of probably 15 minutes, my world was turned upside down and inside out. Doubt and trepidation turned to a feeling of bewilderment in that I had no category or place to put this, not any means of denying it, digesting it, or hiding it, any of which I would have gladly done. While Dr. Weiss did not press for whether or not the experiences were real, there was no question in my mind that they were, and that my current life and future had been altered all of a sudden. I was far more concerned about my own mental health than that of the angel therapy folks or anyone else. Oddly enough, while this shook me to the core, it did not shake my belief in God. Rather, it began an outgoing process of taking God out of myself and my childhood created special box and recognizing what eternity really meant. I left at the lunch break, and my wife could tell that something was wrong with me. In periods of 3 hours, I went from a black and white thinker to basically a man without certainty of anything. My belief system and limitations thereof had been shattered. There was no question that what I experienced had been true. My hypnotic state was technicolor and as real as my hands are to me now. My prior knowledge of Norse life did not hold a candle to what I knew in this experience. My name was Johar, pronounced as Johar, and I knew that it was my name. After returning home from the training, I looked for it in the internet and found it on a site of ancient Norse maze, and I knew it would be me. The following day found me between two worlds, and I went into the seminar thinking, what next? Almost as if I was someone sentenced to regression, to be thoroughly kicked and resigned to it. Sure enough, the next regression was far more bizarre than the first. I went on to have a cosmic experience in which I became part of human evolution, a dream that allowed me to connect to the entire universe, and a shared experience with a complete stranger in which I could see the details of his regression. I have worked for 25 years with the medically fragile children and chronic schizophrenics, and your seminar allowed me some sense of peace as to the outcomes that many of these unfortunate folks experience. Little else has made sense. I came to your training seeking continuing education credits, and I left with proof of universal consciousness. Most of all, I came away with the hope that previously was sadly lacking. It is my belief that if others could experience that hope, their world and personal view would improve and did as did mine, says Raymond Wilson. Dr. Brian Weiss says, I am grateful to whatever universal forces conspired to land Raymond in our 5-day course. He is such a gift, a big-hearted, down-to-earth man doing truly difficult and delicate professional work. He came for the continuing education credits and left having earned Transform Your Life credits. He also transformed our entire group. Even though Raymond's past life regression was joyless and taught the futility of violence and war, he nevertheless came away with a sense of hope. With each subsequent experience during the week, his hope increased. Finally, he had encountered the answer to the purpose of his life, and the awareness of an expanded vision of God and eternity actually existed. Life is not just a meaningless and continuous struggle to survive. As he will continue to describe his stories throughout this book, in only 1 week, Raymond felt connected to the stream of existence from the very beginning of life on earth. Though Vikings and other incarnations into the entire cosmos and all of eternity. He saw and felt himself a part of the universal evolution and the indescribable wisdom that guides the whole process. He no longer felt separated or alienated. Many people come to my workshops with the enthusiastic wish to remember a past lives. They have read the books to recognize the healing power of regression, and they know that miracles happen. During these workshops, I often make the point that the people who have been dragged there by significant others or well-meaning friends who have no expectations or even interest in having a path of regression are often the very people who have the most vivid and most compelling ones. Raymond, who, for example, he came only with professional credits. Raymond certainly had his doubts,
about the nature of his work. It's a perfect example. He came only for professional credits. In fact, were it not for the gentle convincing of his wife, he would have left the seminar entirely. Yet he had numerous powerful and deeply spiritual experiences. Why does this occur? Our own expectations and desires to relive a past life can often get in our way. We may want it so much that we try to force the process, and paradoxically, we block it. However, with practice, we can overcome any such obstacles. It is important to practice without any frustration, without any attachment to the outcome of a particular session. Don't say, I have to do, I have, don't say, I have to have a regression, for that will only prevent yourself from, from it happening. There's no need to put this kind of pressure on yourself. Just accept whatever comes to your mind, whether you are meditating, listening to hypnosis, CD, participating in a group, regression, or working one on one with a therapist. There is a process and a wisdom at work. As you have already read what you call this process, whether the Tao or the way or destiny or any other name does not matter. What does matter is that you trust in to guide to whatever is that you need to know to go. Take your time and be patient. You may not immediately remember a past life, but instead have a mediumistic experience, perhaps getting a message from the other side. You may have a physical healing, a remission of a troubling symptom. Every time that you practice, you are learning how to relax and how to let go of stress. You're helping your immune system and becoming healthier. These are extremely therapeutic benefits for your mind and your body, and they are valuable in their own right. The more that you practice without becoming frustrated, the deeper and deeper you will go. It may take weeks or months, but the gains are worth it. It took me 3 months until I could remember a past life. One of my patients tried for 8 years before ever successfully regressing. But once she did, the results were incredibly profound. She has since then told me that past life recall brings you healing, that told me that every minute that led up to those ancient memories was worth it. If your past life recall brings you healing or spiritual growth or a sense of oneness and peace, then won't 8 years or even 8 lifetimes be time well spent? I've had many patients or workshop participants who, like the authors in this section, were able to achieve emotional health, emotional healing simply by remembering their past lives. Their stories have stayed with me longer after the regressions. And I have interspersed some of them throughout this chapter. One such person was Yumiko in this life, a Japanese American physician who remembered a past life as an impoverished young girl in London, England, several centuries ago. The past lifetime, she had been the oldest child of six, and by the age of 10, she was working very hard within the family. With no father present in her life and a mother who was often at work, Yumiko had to raise her siblings, and just a little girl, she was taking care of many other young children and babies. She could recall her one dress and how it smelled because she couldn't wash it. She could see the people urinating in the street, especially she remembered she could of not having any soap. She had to wash with only water, but without soap, clothes could never be truly clean once worn. She was forced to become a servant in a bigger, much grander house. The family had soap eventually because was treated so poorly by the madam, she ran away. Not long afterwards, she died at a young age of hunger starvation, and illness, and she floated above and left the past life regression. Yumiko's next memory was of a childhood and a present life in which she was the oldest of three children. She recalled an incident in which her brother's nappy or diaper had fallen off, which she let then had to wash. But this time she had soap. Her thought was, this was a piece of cake. Indeed, she was smiling as she relived this moment and thought of that she could all the things that she was able to do as a child, reading, drawing, that she could never do as a child in her past life due to her extreme poverty. While still in the hypnotic state, she explained to the group that she had learned to be happy about the small things, like a bar of soap. As she told us all, be grateful for and appreciate what you have, not what you don't have. Yumiko's story teaches us that we should not take anything for granted and know and that we should recognize the blessings that we have to, no matter how much they may be. If we need a little but appreciate everything, we will be much happier. As Lao Tzu said over 2000 years ago, he who knows he has enough is rich. After remembering two prior lifetimes in which she died alone, Tong could now, in her present life, fully appreciate the blessings of being surrounded by loving friends and family. Her story follows. Lifetimes of loneliness. During my stay at your 5-day training course, I had several regressions. In two of them, I died in a very lonely state. In the first life, I was a teacher who taught in a hillside primary school in a primitive and poor village. I was a single woman who lived alone. It seems that I was not intimate with my students. I died accidentally on the hill where wild dogs bit at my stomach. Nobody was aware of my death. In the second regression, I was a reporter and again a single woman. I worked hard and quite aggressively, but I again died alone, lonely this time, in a train crash when others who were either dead or injured were picked up by the families. I was still lying on the side. Nobody came to pick me up. Nobody claimed my corpse. In both of the cases, I was cool and reserved a person. That's why I was rather lonely during the lives and in the moments of death as well. But in this life, I chose to be a social worker. I go to people and offer help. I adopted two girls, not just to develop my own family, but also to help in a very intensive way. These two little girls, I have learned to give and relate to others, even if sometimes I have struggled to do so. And I am so happy with all these people nearby. I know that in this life, I will never die alone again with nobody around me, says Tong. Tong's regression demonstrate that patterns often reveal themselves in these experiences to illuminate our spiritual paths. She needed to express and to receive love, and she is doing exactly that. Tong is learning her lessons and finding out more about unconditional love. We are never alone, even if we forget this. And her choice of a social work career preceded the regression. She had intuitively chosen the path of love and service. They were not Tong's only experiences. She shares more below. These are all interconnected, and we'll keep reading one after the other. Homeward bound. My mother and father separated when I was 6 years old and divorced a few years later. They often had fights in the middle of the night. One day, I woke up in the morning and found that my mom had left and her bed became vacant from then on. She had her new family soon after, then so did my dad. I'd grown up in a different childhood with lots of loneliness and anxiety, lots of neglect. I have three sisters, but we were often left at home without an adult to look after us. As a second sister, I had to take care of the small ones by providing them with food or cooking the meals later than I could manage the task. And by doing the household chores when my elder sister was not at home, when I was in primary school, my mom would forget to take me home. I would stand at the school gate for hours waiting for her with loads of loneliness. helplessness, and uncertainty. At 25, I got married, which I had longed to do. My husband is a colleague of mine at the same office, and we see each other during business hours. He's a family-oriented man who gave me a sense of security after we married. However, I still found myself lonely whenever he was not with me or when he worked late and went out for an evening class or had drinks with his buddies. And I worried that he was not mature enough to manage his tasks or challenges in life. This fear haunted me in a subtle way for a long time. I also began rather desperately to long for babies of my own. I thought that when I would be wanted by somebody and that I would always be with the kids if I could have time. However, I tried for more than 6 years. I couldn't have one. It made me even more desperate. In one regression I did with Dr. Brian Weiss's CD, I went back to an ancient time in a bare, remote countryside. I was on the way after, excuse me, I was on my way home after a long war. I was a warrior of the huge body like Hagrid in the Harry Potter books. I was dirty, hairy, tough, strong, and I carried a large hammer as a tool for fighting. Walking with strength and speed, as if I were banging the land with each footsteps, I was on my way home to see my wife and the young son. It seemed that I had been walking for a long time, tired but still strong in every step. I was alone the entire way. There were only stones and some bushes in the surrounding fields. I walked and walked along with nothing and nobody around. When I saw my home, I became extremely excited and walked even faster. I opened the door to find my wife in a wooden hut sitting next to a baby's crib. In the crib was my young son. I recognized him as my husband in this life. I got a flash. I was so worried about him not being strong enough to stay by himself and protecting his mother, and when I was at war and I could not be with them. I woke up in the regression, realized that it was my own problem, that not my husband's. If I constantly and worried about him not being strong or mature enough, from then on I started feeling anxious about him. I still nag him from time to time, but not in the same manner as before. In another regression I did during the 5-day hypnotherapy training class at Omega in New York, I didn't go back to a previous life. But instead of the very first time in that day that I felt lonely, I was 6 years old and in China. It was a school day and the weather was turning cold. And as autumn stepped in out and winter stepped in school and ended, and I stood at the gate waiting for my mom to take me home. I waited and waited, but she didn't turn up. Seeing the students leaving the classroom and being picked up by their parents or the school bus, I became anxious. When all the students had gone and the buses had set off, I was left alone as darkness came with the evening. I stood on the street in front of the gate, which had already been closed. I was so hopeless. This was the first time in my life that I knew how loneliness felt. In the hypnosis, I thought, why don't I try to walk back home by myself? It was only 15 minutes or several blocks away from where I was. Maybe I could remember the way. I took a deep breath and started the walk back home. I was so excited. I was a bit scared, but also a bit happy to leave the darkness in the corner of the school gate. As I took my first big step and set off for home, the scene changed, and in the trance, I saw myself running through a long movie or film tape. The contents of the film were all situations in which I'd experienced loneliness in life, and they have been many over my 30 years. I was growing older and older from a 6-year-old girl to now as years I was growing I ran through and I was so happy and lofty. I ran as if I were flying, my skirt flapping in the wind. I came back to where I was in the room at the Omega training course and understood that I was not the helpless little girl of 6 years old. I learned that I could do something by myself and for myself, that I had the confidence to make something myself free from the darkness. For more than 30 years, I've been working and learning to so hard to overcome all the challenges in my life rather than waiting and relying on others or feeling helpless. After that regression, I have never had that kind of lonely feeling again. And after a few years, I adopted two baby girls as my daughters. I realized that I could do something to make myself happy instead of waiting hopelessly for pregnancy. All four of us in the family and the grannies too, we are so happy and pleased with the current situation. I think it might be the best time in my life. It certainly is the sweetest, says Tom. Dr. Brian Weiss says in reflection to this entire story, the regressions allowed Tong to gain a sense of control in her life. She was able to recognize the past life origins of her doubts about her husband's maturity, which permitted her to let go of her fears and anxieties. Not all symptom inducing traumas are found in prior lives. Tong's feeling of helplessness was rooted in the present life childhood. As she watched a subconscious display a series of scenes of loneliness, she became empowered to take control and be courageous. Adopting the baby girl represented to some degree a conscious decision to not be so fearful and passive, but instead to be active, hopeful, and happy. Dong from China also demonstrates the universality of past life memories and their powerful healing potential. The experience of prior lifetimes and of the after that state is remarkably consistent no matter which culture or religion is involved. People from widely which divergent nationalities and spiritual traditions are able to remember past lives that took place all over the planet. They learn the same life lessons. They are able to heal physically and emotionally to repair their relationships as Tong did and to attain more peace and happiness in their lives. Early life enculturation and conditioning do not influence the contents of the past life recall or spiritual experience. We are all students on this great earth school. Does it really make a difference where a classroom is located? Evelyn was an African American woman in her 40s. She had a severe phobia of water and of drowning. Although she didn't have any real clue of where this fear came from, it certainly interfered with her life. Her husband had recently bought a boat, which only intensified her fear. It has been his dream to own one, and he did not understand the depth of Evelyn's phobia. Her husband, who was outside my office during the session, was surprised to learn that Evelyn did not even own a bathing suit. She felt that this would bring her one dreaded step closer to the water. She was also afraid that her fear of drowning was spilling over onto her three children, and that it would interfere with their pleasures in water and in the new boat. Evelyn's anxiety was so severe that she had traveled half the country to see me. Whenever she put her feet in water, she told me it felt as if hands were pulling her into it. She was very, very afraid of being around water, but even more afraid of not being able to catch her breath. These fears seemed connected, but not necessarily so. I tucked this away in the back of my mind. As I regressed her, Evelyn first went back to childhood memories. She recalled being an infant and hearing a loud noise, which had caused her to cry. As she continued crying, she couldn't breathe, but she was overcome with anxiety and panic. She saw her aunt and uncle with it, and they were terrified. Evelyn, as a baby, felt confused. She knew that her aunt and uncle were alarmed. She could feel the tension, but she didn't understand at that young age what was happening. Evelyn then experienced a past life that had taken several hundred years ago, in which she was an African boy of 12 or 13 years. The boy, along with others from this village, had been captured by slave traders. His mother in that life was a spiritual leader of the people, possibly possessing special powers and certainly healing abilities. But even she couldn't stop the tragedy of these young children being taken away from the village. In that same lifetime, Evelyn recalled the boy being held down by two white men, a boot on his throat. The men spoke a strange language. He was then baptized or cleaned in a long tub with a mirror nearby. The tub was filled with water into which the boy was being forced down. As the water came near his face, he gagged, choked, and found himself unable to breathe. It was truly terrifying. The baptism occurred before leaving Africa, which may help to specify which cultures were engaging in these practices, as there were others who did not enforce baptisms until these slaves arrived in the new country. Her next memory was a vivid one of the same boy around the age of 20 now. He did not know the rules of these strange white people, and he had merely said something not very significant to a white woman. Rather suddenly, he was grabbed, his arms were tied behind his back, and he was placed on a chopping board and decapitated. Evelyn could see the image of his mother's face nearby. The mother had died apparently some time before he had. She was talking to him and communicating a feeling of deep peace. This allowed the young man to become calmer. Afterwards, he could see his head and torso separated from each other, but his soul was all right. Evelyn observed clearly the disdain and aloofness on the face of the white men and women who were looking on. They didn't care. So barbaric, Evelyn said. How could people do such things? The boy's consciousness floated up on the clouds. He was feeling free, strong, peaceful, and could breathe. His earlier thought immediately began before the beheading and then was, I'll never be able to breathe again. At the end of the session, after floating above boy's body, seeing the mother's face and seeing this peace, Evelyn told me she felt like skipping and that she felt so much freer, lighter, and happier. Before emerging from the session, Evelyn had another memory from her current life, an earlier childhood memory with her older brother. He was forcing her to go down a water slide, and she remembered her mouth filling with water and she had difficulty breathing. This confirmed even more so that her fear was not just of water, but of not being able to breathe. After our session ended, Evelyn called her mother, who confirmed that when Evelyn was about 6 months old, she had cried so much that she had turned blue. Her mother had panicked, not knowing what to do, and she had run to the aunt's house with Evelyn in her arms. They were able to calm her down, and her breathing returned to normal as the blue color disappeared. We were both soaked in sweat. The energy, intensity, and visual details and emotions were so profound during the regression session. Just a few days after a session, Evelyn was able to walk in a swimming pool wearing a bathing suit. At the first she had owned in many years, with no anxiety at all. She knew that there was nothing to fear. The fear had come from a long time ago. It was not in the present or in the future. Evelyn's phobias was virtually cured in only one session. Simply recalling the trauma in her childhood and past life was enough to allow her to let go of her symptom. Her fear of water diminished and her breathing was much more improved. As we let go of the past's negativities and regard the future with no worries, we will be released from the constrictions of time. We will live fully in the beauty and freedom of the present moment. In the past life, as a young boy sold into slavery, Evelyn experienced firsthand the terrible effects of racial prejudice and inequality. Gabriella, the subject of the next case, also had important lessons to learn about the same subject. It's time for all of us to go internally and to do our lotus of gratitude as this beautiful day starts. Let's be grateful for all that has traveled, all that has transformed us, all that is transforming us, all that we are tuned in and finding hidden pleasures every single day. We're very blessed to know that all of us who are blessed, who are seated right now, are into the world of gratitude, the world of discovering so much more and to count our blessings. So let's each of us do the lotus of gratitude and take 100 seconds in opening every single petal with a wish or with the gratitude for the wish that you'd had and then culminated into fruition. Take your time, express your gratitude. Let's get in the practice of making gratitude sure. Whenever you feel grateful for something, just drop in a chit. Let's expand our gratitude as never before. Be blessed. Lots of love and light. Keep counting your gratitude and keep learning, keep evolving, keep growing. I'll see you in the gap tomorrow morning at 6 a.m. Thank you, thank you, thank you.